morning, everybody. Welcome along to this session, which is about nuclear energy and the role of international financial institutions within it. I'm Katie Martin. I write for the Financial Times in London, and I write about financial markets for a living, but pretty much every conversation these days is on some level about energy security. So it's great to be in the room today. Nuclear is really back in the picture in this regard. It's an incredibly important part of the global conversation about powering the future. We simply cannot rely on fossil fuels alone. I believe we have a chart coming up that will illustrate this point quite nicely. Here we go. This reality is clear across the world, but every country is at a different stage on nuclear energy. Politics and public perception vary enormously. That's why it's so important that this session pulls together government, the private sector, and multilateral organizations. It also gives you in the audience here today and online an opportunity to ask questions of the people on the stage, which is a fantastic opportunity. Various little reminders will come up during the session to load up Slido, which is a great way to ask questions, and we'll get to as many of them at the end as we can. So let's get going. Firstly, let me introduce, I have a very distinguished panel for today to discuss this issue. Next to me, I have Minister Ladislav Kamenitsky, who's the Finance Minister from the Slovak Republic. So glad you could join us today. We have Linas Baužis, who is from Lithuania's Altra, which we'll hear some more about in a moment. Stefano Buono from Nucleo, Valery Levkov from the World Bank, and Harry Boyd-Carpenter from the EBRD. So let's just set the scene a little bit here. We've got a couple of charts that are going to show you nuclear energy usage across various different countries across the world. But one thing that really stands out here is obviously in the chart that you can see here, the US is well ahead in terms of nuclear production. But when we flip that to look at what proportion of the energy mix nuclear accounts for country by country, that picture changes really quite dramatically. Minister Kamenitsky, as you can see there, the Slovak Republic, it flips really dramatically when you look at what an important part nuclear is to the mix here. Tell us about how you've got to that point.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for the invitation, inviting me here. And really, nuclear energy is really a very serious topic for Slovakia. We already started to build up the nuclear power plant in the 70s. The first reactor was already built up in 70s. So today we have like 5 big reactors already running, 470 megawatts, and one is in preparation. So we plan to start and launch this 6th reactor. I feel that it could be the next year. And even we start the conversation about the even newer one, like 1,200 megawatts. Our government committed to start the negotiations. We already are in negotiation with Westinghouse of America. Of course, we are looking who could deliver us the technology, because our 6 power reactors are based on the Russian technology. Now we would like to change, to shift, and this is something very, very important for us. Yeah, I'm the Minister of Finance, so really debate about the energy is really very, very important right now. We feel that also based on the Draghi reports that said that we cannot compete with other parts of the world without lower prices for the energies. We face the problem that I got one interesting information maybe for the audience, that Europe has like twice as high prices for the electricity, and maybe 3 times higher prices for the gas. That is a really big problem, and problem of the competitiveness of Europe is connected with the prices of energy. So this is very, very important. Maybe I will end up with this, but as you see, Slovakia, we our energy mix is based on 60% on the nuclear energy. This is the second highest in the Europe after France, and we also in the past trusted to nuclear energy. I'm really very happy that because in the past the nuclear was a very sensitive topic, and now I'm really happy that we started debate about nuclear, and I see also shift in many countries. For example, my colleague from Poland I met him. He told me that, for example, Poland, they didn't have any nuclear source. Today they are building like 3 new one, and next 3, like 6 together. So this is some really serious shift that we see.
Can I just stick with you for a little moment and ask you, what is the public perception of nuclear energy?
Generally, of course, it's really important if nuclear is supported by the public. And we see there are some countries that have less support of the public, but in Slovakia, generally, more than 60% of people support the nuclear source, so there are no problems with the public, any problems. In Slovakia, this is very specific.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Linas, from Altra, tell us about Altra and where you fit into this picture.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And this is numbers show that about the production of nuclear energy. 16 years Lithuania not producing the electricity in nuclear power plant because we stopped. It was like a condition to be the part of European Union, but we are still like a nuclear country. Of course, now we have the process of decommissioning. Very important thing is radioactive waste, dismantling of RBMK type reactors, and thinking about how we manage and how we'll keep in the future our spent nuclear fuel. But again, now the discussion about new generation nuclear activities in Lithuania, it's again now on our tables, and the government also as Altra, we are involved in this process. But most important thing is that when decision will be, after 10 or 15 or 20 years, it doesn't matter how to keep, grow, as in the future, all our knowledges and skills, how not to lose and to be, as a country of nuclear family. My key point is it's exactly how to grow and keep our knowledges and skills.
Yeah. Stefano from Nucleo, it must be a very similar picture for you, and you must encounter very different situations from one country to the next.
Yes, just to explain what Nucleo is, we are a company first, which is quite new for this for the nuclear environment. There is a serious now investment that is going into nuclear from private investor. Only ourselves, we have raised now $1 billion as a European company, so that's pretty massive. And we are trying to leverage on the past, on whatever we have accumulated in the past 80 years as experience from the nuclear industry to build a nuclear strategy that is even more sustainable than the one in the past. More sustainable because first we are fourth generation technology that is increasing the safety aspect. Today we are talking about intrinsic safety of the reactors, so reactors that cannot have accident. But this is a characteristic of many new projects. But also, the past projects have increased the safety aspect incredibly. Nuclear is one of the safest way to produce energy. We try to do it at a reasonable cost, even in potentially in competition with fossil fuels in some countries, especially in Europe. And this is possible for two reasons. One is linked to if you use a new technology, you might reduce certain costs, but it's also this SMR, small modular reactor approach that makes reproducibility of reactors easy. The industry working with lower cost with a modular approach, and this is a bit one of the keys to be very competitive. But the third and very important aspect is that we are reusing the nuclear waste, the spent fuel of the countries to make new fuel. Because something that people don't know is that in the spent fuel of a nuclear reactor, we have only used a tiny, tiny part of the energy. We can reuse it. This we know since 8 years, since the very beginning of the nuclear era. But we have never done it because it was a bit too expensive at that time. The one-through cycle was much simpler, mining, enrichment, using, and put it aside. Now it's time to think differently, to make use of this new possibility, but based on all the technology. So it's just a new approach. And I think this is changing a lot, the perception of the public of many countries versus nuclear. One example is Slovakia. We are working on a project with them to use the 1,500 tons of spent fuel that come from their intense activity to be reused many times for making new fuel. And Slovakia could have free energy energy from the spent material that they have today for more than 1,000 years. Just to give you numbers on how much value there is in this spent fuel. So this approach of the new technologies are bringing the general public back, and many countries' strategy to come back into nuclear.
Well, thank you. And Valerie from the World Bank, thank you so much for joining us today. Do you find that the conversation has moved on from whether to use nuclear to how to use nuclear? Have we had a shift in the mindset here?
First, thank you for inviting us. Our mandate is clear. It's to fight against poverty and to push for development. Without energy, there is no development, there is no job. So for us, energy is a core infrastructure pillar for development. And when we look at the energy market, there is a powerful trend ongoing in these markets. First is energy security, and today and these days we see it even more than ever. Second is electricity demand growing, either for more access, universal access, or more decarbonisation usage. And third, with AI and data center, even more electricity demand. So with all these trends, we have observed that there is a more and more demand from our client countries for nuclear energy being in the mix. So it's not as if it was a new priority. It's more having a holistic, technology-neutral approach, and depending on the country needs, the country resources, the country readiness, how can nuclear energy fits in the broad roadmap? Of course, among all those options, we will always look at reliable energy and affordable energy. And why reliable? Because also these new trends comes with more and more massive renewable energy coming in the grid, where we all observe that we need reliable 24 hours a day energy to fulfill the need of the country, to balance the intermittency. So that's, I suppose, where nuclear renaissance came from, including with the hope of the new technologies, SMRs, which are also an incredible promise for the countries we serve, that it could become a solution for all of our countries. So today we are working on these perspectives, working on the preconditions and the enabling environment. We may speak about it later on, to support the country with these new market trends, I would say.
Yeah, we're going to unpick some of that later on, particularly on the point around SMRs, but thank you for that. And Harry from the EBRD, how are perceptions shifting across EBRD countries?
Well, thank you, Katie, and thank you also to our panelists for joining us. And I should say, by the way, that I'm by far the least knowledgeable person on this panel.
There's always me. So.
Okay, well, we can keep in this. I should say my familiarity with nuclear in particular stems from the fact that I'm a customer of EDF Energy in London, and so I'm so looking forward to paying for Hinkley Point C in the next few years. But I think, you know, how's it changing? I mean, the question you get asked is this an inflection point? Because a long time, nuclear industry has been very static. Is something changing? And my answer to that is yes, yes, and maybe. And there's a yes, which is that we are clearly at an inflection point in electricity demand. And Valerie mentioned this, but you know, for years in EBRD countries in Europe, we've had static or even falling electricity demand. And now we see that changes, and we change, you know, Valerie mentioned AI, but we also have e-mobility, we have residential heating, we have industrial, you know, low and medium temperature heat, we have lots of applications shifting. And if you look at electrification rates, I think that is going to be a key metric for geopolitical competitiveness in the next few years. And one of the triumphs of the Chinese economy in the last 10 years has been to triple electrification rate, and we see it as a big priority for the European Commission as well. So we're very confident that there's going to be lots more electricity demand as compared to previous years. So that's one yes. Second yes is that clearly nuclear energy has passed as an inflection point in terms of social acceptability. You know, the mood has shifted. It's not uniform. You know, our shareholders don't have a consistent view, but it's clear that the balance has shifted towards much more tolerance for, appetite for, interest in renewables. The maybe is, are we at an inflection point on commercial viability? Because, you know, if you look across, you know, US, France, UK, Finland, there are all the stories that people will know very well of nuclear just delivering very late and very expensive. But then you also have stories, you know, South Korea, China, UAE, you know, not always, the data perhaps not always so obvious, but there's clearly a case that nuclear can deliver affordably, and then you have the whole SMR discussion, which I'm sure we'll come to. So I think, yes, we need lots of electricity, and we want that to be low carbon, we want that to be reliable, we preferably don't want it to rely on a tanker that comes through the Straits of Hormuz, and nuclear ticks all of those boxes, and yes, it's much more socially acceptable. Is it going to be affordable? Can it be delivered? That's the really unclear question.
Yeah, you raised some good points and some good questions there. Speaking of questions, do remember to put your questions in through Slido, and I'll get them on an iPad slightly later on to address later. But I want to come on to talking about what Minister Kamenetsky and the two private sector people here want from you, right? So
it's normally quite simple.
So what are you looking for from international financial institutions, Minister Kamenetsky?
Yeah, I think a very good question, because now we are facing the problem with financing the new nuclear power plant in Slovakia, and until now, we are at the EBRD forum. So this is EBRD is very focused in the past mostly on the decommissioning, waste management, and other services to be financed. Even I mentioned the nuclear power source from 70s. Decommissioning was financed by EBRD. It was like 1.3 billion euro project. But what we would expect, because to finance a nuclear power plant is really very long-term process. This financing, just to have imagination. For example, we plan, like we need for the new power plant, like 15 billion euros. This is a really long-term project. If we take in account all old projects, it lasted like 15 years. This is many times beyond the banking financing, many times even behind the horizon of the political cycle. That's why it's really a commitment of all the political forces in the country are really important. So political stability is important. What we would be happy if, for example, EBRD with other international financial institutions started to find some financial structure that could be used for financing, building up the reactors and power plants. I feel that there is a big demand. If I speak with my colleagues from ECOFIN, ministers of finance, and they really, because there are many times problems how to finance the new power plant. For example, right now we are speaking about the supplier credit or whatever, supplier financing. We can choose multi-institutional financing or sovereign financing. This is really a question about the cost and then about availability to finance such a project. That's really what we need to get from the private sector, from the international financial institution.
That's interesting, thank you. And Linas, from Altra's point of view, is it about the financing? Is it about the kind of regulatory and credibility element? What is it you're most looking for?
Of course, we're working very closely, for instance, with the EBRD, and it's not only a question on the money, on the capital. It's also about the trust, about the discipline or project management, how we delivering or not, and it's about the work with this financial institution, but also we are working together if thinking about our regulator, how to bring and how to move more faster and not to stop on some stages and not to move our projects on the project line to the right side, and it means delays as it's often happening. But yes, it's thank first of all about talking about the EBRD, which is putting us on the track and how we can delivering everything on the time. And most important thing I think is the risk management.
Right.
To switch on time the yellow lamp to say yes, it is some risks which we need to mitigate somehow.
Stefano, is it similar for you? Is it about that sort of that structure and know-how?
For financing, the SMR can really contribute to that, because if you think about how an asset is financed, capital is deployed at a certain moment. Of course, if construction takes 10 years, it's completely different than a construction that takes 3. So the objective of the SMR world is to really reduce this time, the time where the capital is deployed. That's the first very important thing. But think about the asset that you are building. This is an asset that is going to produce for maybe 60 years without major, reinvestment, only maintenance and so on. So I would say that the private world, for this reason, is getting interested in that, and we are starting to have a lot of dialogue with the infrastructure fund, because they understand that these are really an opportunity for them that have a very long view, also pension funds. We have already investors, even in our company, that are pension funds. So they look at the very long-term investment and stable investment that don't need a lot of follow-ups and monitoring. So that's the kind of financial market that we're seeking for.
That's really interesting. And Valerie and Harry, what do you feel like you have to offer people on the other side of the fence? I'll go to Valerie first.
So first, maybe good to say that we re-entered in the nuclear field as per our policy 1 year ago. We signed an agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency in order to build our capacity, in order to support the market, because we need ourselves to be ready to support the market. So that's what we have done, and that's what we are doing. And what we can bring would be, I would say, first, maybe the first investment, it depends if it's a country which is already a nuclear operator or if it's a newcomer. Of course, it's very different. If it's a newcomer, the first investment will be around enabling an environment for the country to be ready, because it's about country readiness, or for a country which is already a nuclear country to be updated in terms of the latest standards. So it's about, of course, also planification. How is the energy mix long-term planning? That's the things we can support. The institutions' development, the standards, the regulations, the fiscal capacity. Because, of course, the fiscal space is a key element where we in the Knowledge Bank and in the World Bank Group, we have a lot of discussions with finance ministers and with the institution. So how to work on this at a scalable place for nuclear. So all these we can bring, all the advisory and general skills we can have. Second is linked to more nuclear and the foundational conditions to build the institutions or to increase institutions when they already exist. The nuclear safety already, of course, regulator, but also emergency preparedness, which is very specific for nuclear, the skills, the resource waste management, recycling, so all of that, which is the second bucket. And the third, but only I would say the third, is the financing. The financing is massive. And it's not with the public money and the development money that we can finance. But the intention will be how to unlock and how to de-risk the private capital to come in. So we can leverage on our public and private sector arms in the World Bank Group, plus our guarantee platform. And that's where we are working at to find new schemes to really be the catalysts. We may not be the large financer, but the intention would be to be the catalyst in addition to all the enabling environment where we can really provide some funding and advisory. And last is for the first part, enabling environment, we are working with our shareholders today to establish a multi-donor trust fund that could be here to finance this pre-development and institutional readiness for the countries in the first stage.
Yeah, that's a lot of interesting points there, some of which I'd like to take up with the Minister shortly. But first of all, Harry, what are your thoughts there? Are you on a similar page?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all that Valerie said is very relevant for EBRD. I mean, I think the other thing about EBRD is that we have two quite distinct activities. And one is that we are the sort of custodian and the implementing agency for other people's money, so donor money, which we have used, and this is not our balance sheet, but we have the team that delivers that money to support essentially the sort of addressing the post-Soviet nuclear legacy. And the obvious one is Ignalina, decommissioning, Koluzodoy in Bulgaria, and then of course in Ukraine, you know, we were the implementing agency for the Chernobyl new safe containment. So that's one part of our activity, and as I say, that is not our balance sheet, that's not our sort of lending activity, but it does mean that we have that expertise in the bank, which I think is very valuable for us because we can always draw on people who really, really understand the industry. And then on the lending side, with our balance sheet, we've really focused on nuclear safety, and in particular in Ukraine. That's been the sort of focus of our lending. Our shareholders have asked us, and you know, I need to be a bit careful about exactly because I think our shareholders' positions are evolving, and you know, I suspect it's a bit the same for Valerie. But clearly, we have a clear request to step up our engagement, our knowledge, our understanding of what's going on, and certainly to be, I think, much more open to sort of broader possibilities for nuclear safety upgrades, and in particular to keep a close eye on SMR development. And in terms of what we offer, I mean, I think the things that Valerie mentioned, and I'd probably highlight 2 points. You know, one is that as a development bank, you have a mandate to be really engaged in a sector for a long time. As the Minister mentioned, I mean, you really do need to have a long-term vision. If you think about nuclear on 5-10 year horizon, I mean, forget it.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe 1,000 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm young, but not that young. But you know, and one of the things I'd highlight there is the electricity industry is changing. The market is changing very significantly, you know, because of the penetration of very different types of energy, you know, the intermittent renewables. And, you know, we're now dealing with markets where you have extended periods of either zero or negative prices. And with nuclear, you have an asset that makes sense if it runs all the time. Now, what is the role, what is the commercial viability of an asset like that in a market which, for extended periods, is actually charging you to put your electricity on the system? Now, I think there is a good answer there, but you need to be willing to engage and think that through, work with a government, work with a regulator to understand it. And then the other thing I'd say is development banks are interested in systems. You know, they're interested in, you know, our mandate is systemic impact. So we're always trying to look beyond individual projects. And I think it's that willingness to engage with not just an individual plant, but what are the implications for the grid? What are the implications for supply chain? What are the implications for industrial competitiveness in a country? And the willingness to sort of try and connect all the dots that I think is part of the particular value added of a development bank.
Yeah, yeah.
I would like to react on that because I think it's a very important point you made. We are working also for public good and beyond one project, you're right. And what we are doing is also creating knowledge, and especially in the World Bank for emerging markets, for newcomers. So creating this knowledge, sharing, disseminating is part also of our mandate and our duty. Building on good experiences, adapting these experiences from some market to other markets, which are less advanced, and how that can fit to those markets which are less advanced, are also part of this. I would expect what will be the success of this nuclear renaissance in emerging markets, building the appropriate knowledge that can be implemented in our countries.
Yeah, sharing that best practice. Now, a few of you on the panel have already mentioned SMRs, small modular reactors. We're going to turn to a short film now to give us a little bit more insight into what's going on in that space. Lovely. We've all met SMRs now. Stefano, this is very much your baby, right, at Nucleo. Tell us where it fits into the picture.
Well, I'm very happy that you made this video because it's resuming properly what the SMR can offer. The theme of this, there is versatility in the theme of this conference. So, and this is exactly what we are meeting with the SMR. A demand that has changed completely. Just to give you an idea, we are discussing over 27 gigawatt electric of opportunities. That for us is more than 100 reactors. It's really massive demand. No one of these people that approached us wants electricity to be delivered on the grid. Half of them are data center. The other half are industries that needs a lot of not only electricity but also heat in their process. All of them essentially European. Many of these industries use gas turbines because they can deliver steam for the industrial process and also the electricity, of course. And they've been hit by the gas crisis of the past years and the instability of the cost. So they're really approaching nuclear with this willingness to have a stable form of energy that is electricity and the heat, and the flexibility and the versatility of these small modular reactors can really fit very well in this demand, new demand.
Yeah. Yeah, and for you at Ultra, Linus, do SMRs fit into your execution phase?
First of all, what it's need to say, because in our national energy strategy is written that Lithuania will take a decision until 2028 or 2030s to be or not to be like a nuclear country. It's very important political decision.
Yeah.
And it's very important to have the vision to know what we should do. And the second one is, as you mentioned, knowledge, how to keep it, because it's take a very, very long time. Second is looking to SMRs, and it's even in this, our national strategy is written about fourth generation, not 3 or plus, but fourth. And it's also something new for even our regulator, which raising very good questions. And a lot of some projects are now, it's many, almost hundreds projects in the world. It's on developing stage. Just I put, if I can, because 2 days I visited ENEA, it's Italian National Research Center, and look how will be the new generation nuclear reactor. And they see how the team or the company as nuclear did a big and great job. But I understand and look to this, all this facility, I know how it will take a time to receive some permissions or agree with a regulator. It's SMRs, it's very good. You can build it, made it in the factory. You not need to take a long time for installation. You can bring it in, for instance, in our plant, I don't know how it will take a time, 1 or 2 years. But second most important question, how will take a time licensing process? If it will take 3 or 4 years, 2 years for building, 3, 5, 7, and then investors maybe will say, no, this is not profitable. And it's very important because this movie shows not only about producing, but about the decision in the government, society, licensing, even the transmission grid is also very important. And not least, but very important, opinion of society, in which region you will do that.
Yeah. Thank you. Minister Kamiński, so Linus mentioned an important point there, which is investors. And Valerie also mentioned fiscal space. You know, these projects don't come cheap. How do you build this into a fiscal framework that makes sense for the government?
It's really a good topic. Fiscal space is one of the hardest things to build up the nuclear source. Really, if we take into account, we are speaking about some permissions and process and all others. Just to let you know, we are preparing this new power plant. It will be next to the old one. Now we are dealing. In Slovakia is the specific that we would like to have it like a state-owned power plant. So we would like to buy the half of the shares of the company that was preparing the site. That is, and this took like years. It's not like a process of last 2-3 years. So we already have the permission. We already have the EIA permission. So this is the process, and we just now dealing with how to deal with half of this private company to buy the site, to prepare it, and it will cost maybe like 200 million euros. This is something is like 0.15% of GDP. That's not such a big cost, but in the future there will be a big problem. Slovakia right now is having After the last government, we inherited a very high deficit, so we are in the consolidation phase, so we have to decrease the deficit, and then we have to find the sources for the new power plant. It's really complicated, so you have to split it. You have to split it into maybe next 10, 15 years. Colleagues told that it will last like 10 years, but I feel that it's always 15. That's the problem. And you should plan it in advance how to finance and how it will influence your fiscal space. What is interesting, it was mentioned, really expertise. To build up the power plant is a really complicated process. I know because really in Slovakia since the 70s we have a really big experience with all these processes. You see that colleagues is also working with the Slovakia, so this is not easy. You have to have the teams, you have to have the experience, knowledge, what is happening. There is in this process is not always the nice weather. So sometimes happen the problems, and you should avoid these problems in advance. So Slovakia is offering now, for example, university education in this field because not many countries have this experience, and we would like to share this experience. What do you need? Dedicated teams, technical expertise, modern risk assessment tools, and so on. This is very complicated. So this is.
And presumably a variety of financing sources, right? So, again, thinking of where the World Bank fits into this, there has to be a role for the private sector, there has to be a role for government, there has to be a role for multilaterals.
Generally, the sources of financing for the Ministry of Finance are equal because they are influencing the fiscal space. Just we are speaking what would be the most how to say profitable for the Slovakia. What is in the interest of Slovakia? Of course, we are asking also EBRD, some other institution, about the rates, about the cost of financing. This is important. Of course, Slovakia can finance also from the sovereign bonds, but of course, this is also the question of how if these sources are available or not, and what are the costs of financing.
Valerie, what does best practice in that regard look like for you about this mix of financing sources?
So, as we said, no one can finance it alone, and it's all about partnership. Thanks to the topic of fiscal space, for sure, the more we can leverage on private capital, private sector, better it will be for everybody. For that, we need really to work on the complementarity and to allocate first the risk to who can bear it, and also to structure the project, because as you said, it will be on 10 years, maybe more. So how to give confidence to private sector on this long-term engagement? Because the private capital need visibility, certainty, transparency, stability over decades. That's where we need to build that ahead of time to give this confidence. And of course, the multiplicity of financing solutions exists also, supporting the financing the educational system, financing the supply chain, because it's also about local jobs. We are working really to build this large-scale infrastructure with as much as possible local skills, local jobs. So you can also finance small and medium enterprises, which are part of the supply chain, because a nuclear industry, of course, you have the big generator, etc., but you have hundreds of small and medium companies which are within this supply chain, but which needs the skills to be at the level of quality and standards which are required by the nuclear industry. That's where also we can bring the financing to build this capacity and to support also this supply chain. So I would say for each country, it's an holistic approach. You need to have this vision, this strategy, all the enablers to be built upon, and then achieve each of them piece by piece. And that's really what we want to bring to our countries, our client countries.
Yeah, yeah. Harry, what are your thoughts there? You know, there is this mix of financing sources, and the supply chain is incredibly important. This is reflected in some of the questions that have come through already. What are you doing to enable all of that?
Well, I think what we're focused on, particularly because we're a development bank that overwhelmingly lends to the 75% to the private sector, is you have at the end of the day, what is a nuclear plant doing? It's selling electricity and potentially in some circumstances heat, and you need to know, okay, that's a competitive market. What's the product? What's the consumer? How much is that consumer willing to pay? How much price and term certainty will a consumer give you? What gets complicated with nuclear is that the asset is providing not just kilowatt hours, but it's also providing security, stability, potentially system services. And then how do you monetize that? What is the right price to pay? Who should pay that? And I think until you really answer those questions, you can't really structure the financing, because you have to ultimately know clearly what is the value this asset is providing to the economy and to its consumers, and how is that value going to be monetized? Now that gets very challenging when you look over a sort of 10, 15, 20-year horizon, and it also gets challenging, as I said before, when you get a very volatile and frankly unpredictable and wholesale electricity market with very wide swings in sort of from an hour-to-hour basis. So you can see how you solve for that. You see that countries are solving for that essentially by giving some form of revenue certainty. As Valerie said, for an asset like this, you've got to give the private sector some form of certainty. But how you do that, whether you do that through the electricity sector and putting the costs on the consumers, whether you do it at a government level and take it as a fiscal cost, those are political decisions. Once you have clarity on that, then you can structure the financing, and once you give that clarity on the revenue stream, then the financing will follow. But I think that's the bit we're particularly interested in, because we, as I say, we focus so much on the private sector, is understanding the commercial value and the economic value of nuclear assets.
I find it intriguing that investors don't ask the same sorts of questions when it comes to putting data centers in space or financing any sort of wild AI project, but they ask these very sensible questions when it comes to nuclear energy. It's a funny disparity there. I want to open the floor to some questions. As I mentioned at the top, it's a great opportunity to ask questions of a very distinguished panel. Would anybody like to raise their hand? Please. I think someone will come to you with a microphone.
I think this is a very useful discussion, and I am from AIIB.
Could I just ask you to say where you come from? Sorry, your microphone is on, but we don't know who you are.
Yeah, so I am from Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Vice President Ajay Bhushan Pandey here. So it's good to hear the colleague from the EBRD and the World Bank, and also the minister, and also from the industry. I would say that we have entered into the era of renaissance of nuclear energy, rebirth of nuclear energy. So the need for the nuclear energy, the electricity demand, and also the energy profile, the data centers and everything is there. Particularly when I look at our own shareholders, we have 111 countries as our shareholder, mostly from the emerging economies, and their needs for the electricity. So what we have seen, that there is a growing demand for the energy security, and particularly this kind of a nuclear energy among the emerging economies. That is where the demand is. And based on that, we have also started the review of our own energy strategy, and trying to include this nuclear energy into our strategy. And we have recently entered into a letter of intent with the IAEA to include, how to do this energy planning and include this. The point that I think, was also discussed here about the financing. See, the demand is so much that it can't be done by the sovereign government or even the IFIs. So what has to be done is that I think the combined approach, the sovereign, then also the multilateral development banks, IFIs, and also the private sector. I think, we have to have that approach there. But the question is that how do you get the private sector?
Yeah.
And in fact, I would remind that about 20 years back, particularly in the emerging economies, the solar energy used to be very costly, and I remember those days that particularly, that time I used to work in India, and I was the head of the CEO of one of the largest power companies, and then the solar cost used to be 3 times the cost of energy produced by coal. And what happened, that with the appropriate policies by the government, so the governments kind of incentivized or mandated through the regulation the mix of this renewable power, and so that the solar energy can be promoted. I think many of such policies, and in fact, Hari, that point that you mentioned, that the nuclear energy for a long time is going to provide the energy security. How do you monetize that? Once you monetize that, in fact, you have mentioned about the majority of the nuclear demand is coming from the data centers and those people. So they are seeing value of this. So if we can monetize that, and if the government policies can actually promote that, I think that will be something which attract a lot of private capital, then the IFI capital, and then I think we will get there.
Yeah.
One more important point, that because there will be large number of countries will be interested, so what will be required is some standardization, like standardization of the processes, the capacity building within the countries, the regulatory institutions, environment and social policies, and nuclear safety, because the private sector will also go, the IFIs also will go, and then they can't go with their own requirements, right? So there has to be standardization. I think we all need to work there, and if we do this, we will get the finances, we will get the standardization template, the agencies like OECD, nuclear, and then also IAEA and all the IFIs. There is a great potential to collaborate on this front so that we can meet the challenge. And particularly what has happened is, let's say if we were having this debate 2 years back, perhaps there wouldn't have been so much of interest. But then the current geopolitics, right, has made out a very strong case for this nuclear energy, and I think that's what it is. Right?
Yeah,
thank you.
You make some very good points there, thank you. And I think I'll take that to Minister Kamieniecki. It is about this holistic government approach that is so central to bringing in all these different forms of financing. How are you managing that across the whole of the government?
This process of financing is really, we are thinking also there is other possibility of financing such a project. You have to split it to two parts. One is the preparation of the site, one is the power plant itself. We are also, if you are dealing with the suppliers, of course, you have to think about also financing possibilities, and some suppliers may offer you the financing from the electricity produced by the power plant in the future. Of course, this is not easy task, because as already mentioned here, you have different risks connected with the construction. Of course, there could be some problems. You should be aware of that this power plant will run in production. That is the main source. And I would say that if you overcome all these struggles, at the end, we see it in Slovakia, we really can produce cheap energy from the nuclear. This is something that will offset your effort to come to that. One more thing to these small modular reactors is now we also were looking at these. We expected that it should be something smaller, it will be much easier to set up, but right now I see some problems there, because also you were talking about efficiency of how much you spend money and how much you get from that, from the production, and how are these costs of this, and so you should look at it. And until now, I don't with the small modular reactor. reactors, this efficiency is still missing. But in the future, I hope that will be solved. And of course, these permission problems. If you have the same kind of permissions needed for small nuclear reactor, then you spend so much time like with the big one, and that's still the problem.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, this supplier's side of financing could be the solution, but I feel that demand is big. So there should be find some structure how to finance such a project, because we are talking about, but maybe the financial institution should come with something interesting also for the government.
Yeah, to help turn this into a win-win. We probably have time for one more quick question from the floor. There's a hand that's gone up over here. I think there should be a mic come to you. Okay, who are you?
My name is Gabriele Fattorelli. I'm director at the Independent Evaluation Department of the EBRD. I just want to pick up at the point you raised at the very beginning, Katie. What is the role of the MDBs in all this? I mean, we have a recent study, and the independent evaluation look back to identify lessons that can inform decision making in the future. So maybe this question is for you, Harry and Valerie, about. So how one thing emerging from the evidence is that often MDBs, when re-engage in a new sector, or in a sector where there was no engagement for some time, we tend to overlap. We tend to even compete sometimes in a healthy way, sometimes in a less healthy way. So what would, from your perspective, how you see, mechanism in place for MDBs really play as a system and be effective in meeting the demand that Minister Kamiński and the private sector actually highlighted, and potentially what kind of lessons and data and evidence you may need to get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. It's a good point, isn't it? How do you avoid falling over each other?
So maybe I can start. So first is not reinventing the wheel. That's why we are building all our capacity, including assessment of readiness with the International Atomic Energy Agency, not to reinvent our own capacity. And second is working in partnership. I am here today because I have been invited by my friend from EBRD. We are working closely together on a unique project, and we are doing the same due diligence with the same lender, technical assistance, and we have signed a mutual reliance agreement. And more, at least I can tell it from the World Bank Group perspective, partnerships is not an option. It's really what we want to do with other MDBs. We have more and more focused on each sector, MDB working groups to align. So I cannot promise to be 100%, but the willingness is there. And I can tell you that my presence today is a testimony of this willingness.
It's good to hear.
So, I mean, I'm told that from time to time MDBs compete with each other. I personally have never observed that, but you know, but no. I mean, look. Firstly, I think what Valerie said is really fundamental. I mean, it is a small community of MDBs,
right.
and I think just the willingness to work together is very important. I think, frankly, the World Bank's leadership. I mean, at the end of the day, the World Bank does lead particularly the MDB community, and the World Bank's leadership is really important. I'm personally really excited about the knowledge bank. I think that's the way that the World Bank and the IFC can put their sort of subject matter expertise together is, I think, going to be very helpful for that. I mean, it gives us a much clearer sense of our counterpart. So I think there's an onus on us just to do it, right? I mean, just to not just talk about MDB cooperation, but do it. I also think there's an onus on our shareholders and our customers, you know, to also keep an eye on us. And if you see us sort of, you know, overlapping and, you know, put us in line. So I think there's that. And then just on the sort of the role of sort of reflection and evaluation, you know, that is really, really important. And especially at this point, I think there is always a tendency, you know, in the sort of front line of the development, you're thinking about your project, you want to get your project. And the point I made earlier about the importance of thinking about the system and about connecting the dots. And I think what the evaluation function in an MDB brings us is that sort of constant sort of nudge of hang on a minute, reflect, look at how this fits into the bigger picture. And we need that, because otherwise there is a sort of always the sort of the attraction of the now and the immediate can pull you away from this sector more than any. You have to keep the whole system in mind, otherwise you won't be successful.
Yeah, and that actually, it brings us right back to where we started, right? That we have to move on from the old world and from our reliances on old forms of energy. This isn't a sort of nice-to-have discussion. This is something that everyone needs to take seriously, and to think about resilience. You know, nuclear obviously has to be part of that. And again, as we've all said over the course of this panel, it's all about sharing best practice, which I think all of you on the panel have done this morning. So thank you so much to Minister Kamiński, to Linus from Ultra, from Stefano from Nuclear, to Valerie from the World Bank, and from Harry from the EBRD. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you all so much.
Thank you.